All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Greg Helbeck, Michael Pinter of Real Estate Investing in New York show. So today we're going to talk about, how do you treat your leads, and we're going to cover like lead urgency, because this is something that I'm trying to train my team and my business. Michael's trying to train his team, and this is something that people don't really talk about. And I guess the first thing I'll say about it is not all leads are created equally, but the leads that are high priority online leads must get called back literally instantly, or else you're automatically at a disadvantage versus a cold calling lead when they just want an offer. You can wait 40 minutes and call them back because it's really not going to make a difference. So Michael, what's your process look like when it comes to really online inbound leads? Because you do a fair amount of it.
Sure. So ideally, I have two people in lead management, and their priority is to answer the calls live when they come in. Right. That's what I prefer. And I tell them that unless you're on the call with someone who's really high priority, you drop the call and pick up a live call if you can. Their second priority after that is to call a live call that we missed back within 2 minutes. There's a huge lead urgency, because what goes on is that people that go to Google, let's say, for example, mostly Google, and they type in, I want to sell my house fast in wherever they are. They're not just clicking on your ad, they're clicking on multiple ads. And the one that's the quickest has a big advantage in getting the deal done. And the one that calls them back right away, because very often it's first to lead gets it. Speed to lead matters on any kind of online inquiry. And a lot of people, you can't treat them the same as you said, as lower priority leads. Like a mail lead. Now the person might have got 5 postcards and they're calling them all, but there's a lot more, what am I looking for? Multiple buyer inquiries done online, because it's so simple, right? You can just go down the list, click, and so we try to get the call answered live if we can.
Yeah, especially with Google or pay per lead if you're doing, speed to lead or need to sell my house. Actually, need to sell my house fast is a different story. But
need to sell my house fast says that they send it right away. Speed to lead does not, because they try to verify it via text. So there probably is a bigger gap. So different pay per lead providers, and there's a trade-off, right? Because on Speed to lead, if I see that they verified with text and they know the person is really the person, that has an advantage to me. But like, I spoke to the guys that need something else fast. I'm like, why don't you do that? And like, well, we could do that, but that means you're not getting it first. Other people might be calling them first if they're going to multiple places. So it's different with every
speed to lead. That's really valuable, because then you're not, because we get a lot of leads where like it's not like this idiot from Need to Sell My House Fast called yesterday, and he was like calling on behalf of somebody, and he was not a real player. And I'm like,
I just got a lead where it was the realtor. It's the realtor, and the property's listed for $150,000 more than I would even think about paying. Like, that's a waste.
Yeah, it's a big waste. You know what we've been doing now? It's on that note, and then we'll cover more of the lead stuff. I had this thing I was telling Brett yesterday. I was like, listen, and I was giving him an example from me. You know what I mean? I said, listen, what the seller's asking price is irrelevant to our offer. I said, like, if they're asking $1 million, but they're motivated, that's a good lead. So I have this problem, and this is something I need to work on, is I can have a really good call with an owner. Let's say it's an online lead and they're motivated, but then we get to their asking price. And if they all of a sudden say like the market value or maybe higher than the market value, but they're motivated, I have a tendency to kind of shut down and sabotage myself. And I did a podcast with Eric Brewer on my other show, and he was basically saying like the seller's asking price is irrelevant. Like their price doesn't matter, right? Because we're only going to buy the house for whatever we're willing to pay for it. So the point I'm trying to make is, don't let the seller's asking price ruin your sabotage your sales process. Because I can tell you one thing, I bought a lot of houses where the seller was asking one price and they ended up selling it to me for a lot lower than what they were asking. And if I were to like get in my tendency of like shutting down and just making it about the price, we would have not bought the house and some other idiot would have bought it. So
sure.
You got to.
I agree 100%.
You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. Yes.
Especially in New York, because people are pretty like I can actually say this like with confidence. Like the seller avatar in New York and the seller avatar in Delaware, it's like night and day. Like the people in Delaware, and I'm just going to say this on the record, aren't as smart as people in New York. And if I offended somebody, fuck off. Like, cause it's true. People in New York, dude, I'm just being real here. Like this is the truth center. People in New York are smart. The people that we deal with, even when they're motivated, they know what's going on. Like there's no bullshit. Like the people in Delaware, you have to be careful because they are not sophisticated at all. They don't know what's going on. You can take advantage of them, which I don't, but they do not know the process. In New York, they all know the process. Like, have you seen that in other markets, man? It's a true thing.
So I've seen a little bit on the markets, but I've always said that I think the way people think about real estate in New York is dramatically different than the other 49 states. It's because the process takes so long, because attorneys are involved. People don't look at their house in New York, even a vacant inherited property, as some kind of solution for a short-term financial problem. But in other states, people think that, right? Even in California, you could sell a house in a week. So if I'm in a real jam, right? My son got arrested for some crime he didn't commit, and they need $100,000 posted cash, or $1 million posted cash, or my son's going to sit in LA County jail. I could sell my house, right? Now I may know I'm going to take a haircut. I'm going to take a haircut, and I'm going to have to find a place to go. But I can sell my house real fast, right?
Yeah.
But in New York, no one thinks that way because everything takes months and months and months. So like the whole sales pitch in most of the country is, hey, I can close I go super fast and no closing costs and easy schmeezy. We're going to close it in 2 minutes. But in New York, if you come with that pitch, a lot of people are appalled, repelled by it because they think you're full of crap, right? You're not closing in 2 days. You're not closing in 10 days, right? It's not going to happen. It can take a month to get title in some towns in Suffolk County. So the speed is very different, right? And what I'm finding, because I'm operating in Texas now, is that if you're not quick to give an offer and get into contract in those places, you're going to lose a deal. In New York, it's very rare I'll lose a deal because of time. I have lost a couple, not going to say I haven't, but very rare. More likely that guy's going to come back to you in 6 months. I just had a lead come back to me. I've been talking to for like 3 years. Like I've been talking to before the pandemic. And he finally agreed, went down on his price yesterday. Now, what you said about price is incredibly important. Now, I try to get price expectations from the seller, but the other pillars of motivation, right? So that's time, reason, condition. If those don't match up, even if the guy wants more than retail, it's still a good lead because he'll never sell it for that. So what happens, and you've seen this I'm sure 100 times, is some guy will tell you what he wants for his house and it's full retail price because he heard that's what price houses are going for, right? I want 500. I heard all the houses going 500. The difference is his house is a piece of crap, right? It needs $100,000 worth of work. So when that happens and the guy says he wants 500, I'll absolutely go on the appointment and make an offer for 300. Now he may get offended, but we both know he's never going to sell it for 500 in that condition. Like it's almost never going to happen. So what do I care if he wants 500? I know that I'm going to have to make an offer significantly less, and I'm probably not going to even justify it. Or I may say, you told me the house needs a lot of work, or the house needs a lot of work, and I'm sorry. We have the way that you and John Martinez taught me to give the offer, where I basically make them beg me for the number. But I want to give that offer, even if it's significantly below the price expectation, if the other motivation is there. Now, if it's not there, if the guy is in no rush, if he doesn't really have a strong reason, right? I'm thinking about moving, and the condition, okay, then for me, that's a listing lead, right? That's a lead where I'm going to go to the guy now that I know that he wants full price, and now that I saw the house, or he told me it's an 8 or 9 out of 10, I'm going to say to him, I can get you that number, but you're going to have to let me list it. And sometimes then the truth will come out, and he'll say, well, to be honest, I need to get into contract now, and I'm not closing for 6 months, or some kind of crazy bullshit that he never said before. So I'll very often, because I take listings, and I don't do this in Texas, I only do this in New York because I'm not a licensed realtor in Texas. I'll say to the guy, I'll give you both numbers. I'll tell you what you can list it for, and I'll tell you what I can pay for it. And you're probably gonna make more money if you list it. But here are the pros and cons of listing it or selling it to me, right? If you sell it to me, my price isn't going to change. I'm not going to do an inspection and knock you down the price. I'm not going to do an appraisal and ask you to go do work to the house, and I don't have any contingencies, right? If you list it, you're going to have to be on a buyer's timeline. That guy can walk after 3 months because he says he got denied for a mortgage, and that guy might change the price on you 3 times. So that's the pros and cons, and that's how I present it to them.
Yeah, and you might get more money if it all works out.
Right, and I'll say you probably will get more money if you list it, but you have to understand these are the downsides. You can get screwed. You're going to be all excited about your price, and then they're going to come in and change it. And these are the things you're not going to have with me. You're paying me. You're getting less money for me for the certainty and convenience that I'm providing. It makes perfect sense. That's the truth.
Yeah, well, it's in the retail game, it's more risk, more reward, right? You risk the buyer flaking for more money, or if you sell to a cash buyer like you or me, like less risk, but less money. Certainty, right? Certainty costs money. And
right. Certainty, convenience, and control. I'm not sure what the control is.
Yeah, there's no outs.
Control,
there's no outs. Especially when you put a $10,000 deposit down. Like, I'm not going to walk from that. I will if it's a really bad deal, but if it's like a I mean, I've had that happen.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
I had a $3,000. So quick story on this. This is me being an idiot. We got this like borderline lead in Newburgh. It's in a decent area, but the guy was like, this was last year. The guy was like, he seemed like a guy who could like lie for a living, kind of like an attorney. But anyway, he he was like making the house sound really good. And I'm like, all right, if based on what you're saying, I'll do it. I'll put down a decent deposit. I put down $3,500, and I ended up we signed a real contract, and I went there afterwards and like checked it out myself. And he like did all this shitty Mickey Mouse work, and there was all these illegal permits. And I was like, this thing's a fucking piece of shit. And I was like, I didn't see it was garbage. I was like, and the guy like definitely, he was super flaky. And I'm like, listen, this is not what I expected. Unfortunately for me, I have a contract with a deposit. Unfortunately for you, you have a contract with a deposit. Keep the deposit.
You have a deposit.
Hasta la vista. And I lost the money. But here's another example on what you said earlier with people not knowing, people in New York not like knowing that their house isn't that liquid. So I went on an appointment like a month and a half ago, and the guy wanted to sell in like a month. So I said, all right, if your attorney knows what he's doing and he understands this process, we can probably close in a month, but it's up to your attorney. It's not up to me. I have no control over your attorney and his ability to wheel and deal. Fucking attorney. Oh my God. I'm not mentioning his name, but he is really bad. And it took him about a month to get the smoke alarm affidavit signed, which is delaying the closing. And the guy's not that pissed because he knows his attorney.
Smoke alarm affidavit.
So if you, in this one town, you need to get a municipal search and you got to get this affidavit notarized, and like, it's very easy. You got to get it fucking notarized. It takes like all of 20 minutes. But because this guy doesn't know,
his attorney can notarize it for him.
Isn't that interesting? But these people don't operate, this isn't a logical attorney. So anyway, he's like, skeptical because he's a New York guy, and he's like, I'm going to do everything through my attorney. His attorney was fucking really hard to communicate with. Took him a month to get this thing signed. So now we're probably going to close in like 3 or 4 weeks. So ultimately a 2-month settlement, but that's out of my control, right? It's out of my control. And I can't,
you did everything you were supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. So if he's angry at me, I'll just be like, listen, dude, like your attorney, like call your attorney and yell at him because it's not my fault. I mean, yeah, anyway. So the point is like, listen, my record in New York of closing a deal is like 30 days, I think. 30 days I did a house one time, and everything, the stars aligned. It wasn't a wholesale deal. I bought it with a private lender.
I've closed in less, but it's, I told this kind of company right away, you got to do whatever you got to do to get me this title right away. You got to send somebody out there right away. And it happened, but a quick wholesale deal for me is probably
3 months,
2 months.
2 or 3 months. It really depends on the town, because the title is easy. I can get title back in a week and a half. It's the municipal search is where the problem is. It's not the title.
Let's talk about what municipals are, because nobody who's outside.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. What is municipals, Michael?
So municipals are additional searches. I don't know anywhere in the planet where it happens besides New York. So typical municipal searches are in Jersey, housing and building search, which is with the building department to see if there are any open permits or open violations. There is a tax search, so a separate search to see what the current taxes are, what they're due, and usually there's multiple taxes paid in New York. And then other stupid search. Those are the important ones. The other stupid searches like the Patriot search and all the other crappy searches, they're always done separately. They're done from a separate company The title company has to pay the search companies to do them. The problem is to get a housing and building search with certain municipalities like town North Hempstead, that alone can take 2 months, right? It should
Yeah.
take 2 hours, but it could take months. And there are townships and stuff like town of Babylon right now, which are slow as hell. They also they just don't respond to those things quickly, and nobody wants to close without those because those could be big problems. So it's not uncommon for title to take 5 or 6 weeks,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's
Sometimes
talk
longer.
to people in most states, and they're like 5 6 weeks. That's a month after I already closed on this deal.
Yeah, it's already on the market. Here's a little hack
Yeah.
for that for people. If you want to, if you need to close fast and you for some reason, can't wait. Let's say the seller like really needs to get out of there. You can call, I mean, at least in my area, which is probably the same in your area, you can, because it's basically the same area, but you can call the building department. At least what I do is I'll call the building department and say, listen, I'm in a crunch here. We're waiting for this municipal search. Can you tell me if there's any violations on the property? And I've done this where like they've said no, and I've gotten them to send me an email in writing, and I just bought the property. And then afterwards we got the search back. But there is a risk there because maybe they put something on after the fact, but you
Maybe
don't
the person you
really,
spoke to didn't find it. There is
yeah,
a risk, but I understand what you're saying. You can do that, yeah.
I've done that. But the thing with that is like, you got to understand if you're getting the property at a certain number, like generally it's still going to be worth it for you. Especially if you're
Yeah,
well,
certainly. If you're
if you're-
doing massive renovation on it and you're going to get permits anyway, it doesn't really matter if there's an open
yeah,
violation because you're going to fix it when you do the work. It really depends on what you're doing. If you're wholesaling it, it could be a big problem because the person you're trying to sell it to might find that and go, no bueno, I'm not closing.
Mhm.
So it's a bigger issue. But if you're going to do like major renovations to it, then whatever the permit or violation issues are, you're going to cure it anyway.
That's the thing. If you're wholesaling, it's a lot harder to do that because you're not in control. Well, if I'm buying it directly, I make the decisions, but if the buyer's like, I need munis, which is a municipal search, you're at the mercy of the buyer. And like, yeah, I'm dealing with this right now.
Every buyer
Yeah.
is going to want munis in New York. Every buyer, because they're all concerned, right? They want to know what they're getting into.
Listen, I get it. If I'm buying from a wholesaler in New York, I'm the same way. I'm like, because I don't know what the fuck's going on because I didn't get the deal.
Caveat emptor.
Yeah. That's the thing. I actually in California, it's weird because there's COs in California, but it's not like a big problem. Like if you have an open CO on a property, like you can just close, like it doesn't really do anything. Like let's say someone does it like a deck in the back of their house and there's no permit for it. Like
you get a permit for it.
Yeah, it's not really like a big fuss. But in New
York,
it's like
I'm gonna ask you to saw off a foot of it like you had to.
Oh, that was funny. So I'll tell so real quick. This happened to me actually a couple of years ago. I bought a property and I had clean municipals, and the way that the building, this wasn't, oh my God, the town of Orangetown and Rockland is like dealing with fucking prisoners. It's terrible. So they gave me a clear search, and I bought the property and did some work on it and I sold it, and I went into contract again with the buyer. And the way that the buyer got the search, I guess they changed their process in between the time, and they started sending people out to the properties, not just doing it all internally. And they saw that there was a deck on the property, didn't have a permit, which is weird because you think there'd be, a deck is pretty standard when you build new construction. Anyway, they saw that the deck wasn't compliant with the setback, which means that like the lot and the deck were not the right length. So they made me literally chop off like a half of a foot on the deck. I had to get some guy to go chop the deck off. Then they measured it and they gave me the clear. But like, that's the reality in New York. Like you have to understand that like that stuff will happen and there's nothing you can do about it. And when you have attorneys involved, it just makes everything more complicated because the buyer's attorney is like really going to look out for their client, which is the right thing to do. And they don't really give a fuck that the building department fucked up because all they care about is getting their client protected and getting them the house. So like in other
100%.
states, it's not a problem because the title company just doesn't, the title company, like in Delaware, like they don't give a shit. Like they're not representing the seller or the buyer. They're in the middle. They're the glue that holds it together. So you don't even need to put a deposit down and they don't give a shit because it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But in New York, that's not how it works.
In New York, it's different. There's a big area called Levittown, built by a guy named Levitt. And a lot of the houses had second floors that were only given C of Os as a shell. So they're saying like, we're giving you an attic, even though it's a big second floor and you can definitely put 2 bedrooms and a bathroom on there. And these were all built in the 50s. And a lot of people obviously put 2 bedrooms and a bathroom up there. Makes
Yeah.
sense, right? It's a cape, and now they have 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in the house. But a lot of those don't have a C of O for them. So what happens, unfortunately, is that if you go to see the property, um, and you want to do any work to it and get a permit, they go up and they go, you don't have a permit for this being finished. This happens also in a lot of basements. You need a permit for
Oh,
finished
a lot of
basement.
basements.
So you're
Yes.
like, okay, it's easy to get a permit, but it's not, because then they check all the electrical and make sure that it's the code. You have to get an electrician certificate that everything's the code. And sometimes it's not. You have to get a plumbing permit to make sure all the plumbing for the bathroom is the code. Sometimes it's not. And you have to get a building permit to finish that whole area. Now, these are not simple things. They're not cheap things. And sometimes it's a big problem, right? If the plumber in the 50s screwed up, then you have to redo the drain to the sink in the bathroom. Who the hell wants to do that? It's a pain in the ass. If the guy didn't wire it right, whatever he did, he used the wrong breakers. You have to rewire this thing. So these are things that when you wholesale a deal are going to come up. Now, the truth is, even if you close on it, you're gonna have to deal with that before you buy it, because as you said, the buyer's attorney is going to tell the buyer to look out for this stuff. And in certain areas, people look out because these things happened dozens of thousands of times.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing I've noticed too with like, even with like getting permits, like if I don't like to get permits. So I mean,
Me
I don't know
neither.
who does, but there are times.
Well, in certain places, it's an easy process.
Yeah.
In California, you go in, you get a permit in 3 days. For
Oh
us,
yeah.
you can wait 4 months.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So what I normally do is like, I mean, this doesn't work every time, but if you're not doing anything really obvious, i.e. blowing the back of the deck off or something like that, you know, actually, I'll tell you this story again. This was funny, but it wasn't funny at the time. I bought a property with Devin in Warwick, which is like one of the best areas around in my area. And we didn't do any big work to the house at all. Nothing. We just put it back on the market because it was just like it was like dated, but it wasn't like in bad shape. And the seller put a new roof on the property before we bought it. And in the listing, Devin wrote like new roof because he didn't know
Ooh.
I mean, it was a new roof to what we knew. And the town of Warwick has like a little like spy hunt, and they look for new listings, and then they'll see on like a new listing on Zillow or whatever. If it says like new roof and they don't see records of that with the building department, they'll flag you on a violation, like kind of like from afar. So we got flagged and we had to fix it, but we had to do it legally. But that stuff happens like that. You have
By
to
the way,
understand that
that's
stuff.
the only place I know that requires a permit for a roof. You
Really?
don't need a permit anywhere in Long Island for a roof. There is no roofing permit.
Really?
Yep.
You think
I
a
could put a
roof
new
would be
roof.
a permit because it's a roof.
You would think, but you don't get a permit for a roof here. You just hire a roofer.
Interesting. That's very strange. That's crazy.
I've never heard that. So I have no problem putting a new roof on all my listings. But like if you put in a new kitchen, that could cause a problem. I had that in Village of Malvern where they screwed me over for that. You put in new bathrooms, new windows. In the Village of Malvern, if you replace 2 windows, you need a permit for it. Because 1 window, you don't need a permit for. How about that?
Interesting. Yeah, that's funny because I normally do roofs on Saturdays after that mistake. Because
And I don't have an issue with it. There's no the building inspector sees a roofer, they don't care.
interesting. I found that, yeah, because the roof is obvious because someone's got to go there and rip the tar roof off, and it's like pretty clear what's going on. But with like a kitchen, like what I normally do, and this worked really well on the last project I did, or the second to last project. I had the guy put all the stuff in the garage. It was a townhouse. He put all the evidence in the garage. You would never know what's going on except for the saws going off and the construction happening. And then at the end of the job, he hauled all the stuff out of the garage. We did the whole house over, or the whole unit over. And the only problem, I showed up there once and there's like 4 guys with saws really loud. And I'm like, yo, like if someone looks in this window, like they're going to see what's going on here. So I had him put like kind of like translucent tape, translucent paper up over the window. So like you can't really see what's going on, but I made a mistake. I almost got busted. I parked my car in front of the neighbor's garage and he's part of the fire department and he couldn't get out. So he had to knock on the door and he's like, dude, you're blocking me in. What the F? And I was like, oh, sorry about that. And meanwhile, like there's a full blown rehab going on so like, you just got to be careful. You just got to like use your brain. And sometimes I don't do
You
that.
got to use your brain. You got to use your brain for sure.
You got to use your brain. But anyway, we started talking about speed to lead, and now we're going into rehabs, which is usually because that's like where most of the bullshit lies. But the main point we want to make as we wrap the show up is when you're getting, especially when you're getting online inbound leads, you need to call them back right away. In New York, you'll have more time than other states, but if you can get into the habit of always calling these leads back right away and being proactive, not only does it demonstrate to the seller that you're consistent, but it gives you a big advantage over other people. Because I know people to this day, they'll call the leads back whenever they have time. And I'm like, dude, if you're spending money on Google and you're not calling them back within like 5 minutes, like you're already like at a disadvantage. So you might as well just cold call people. So hopefully people got value. If they did, if they could leave us a review, that'd be great. And we'll see everyone on the next episode. Take care, everybody.